In this tutorial, we will be building a text chat application that will be using Node.js, Express, and Socket.io. We will also be building a video chat application that will be using the WebRTC technology. For our text chat application, we will want at least two browsers to connect and be able to exchange information back and forth to each other. This tutorial will focus more on the functionality and the back end of Socket.io and how to set that up. There will be some front end functionality as well, and I'll be using Bootstrap for that. So let's go ahead and get started and get our project set up. So here's an example of what our text chat app is going to look like. And this is using just Bootstrap CSS, nothing too crazy. And we can actually even access this on our phone because it's on a live server through Heroku. So I'm just going to refresh the page real quick and show you how this works. So I'm going to connect this with 3 clients, 2 on my browser and 2 on my desktop and 1 on my phone. Okay, so we can see that this is set up. So I'm going to now I'm going to go to the other client. And then I'm going to use my phone. So you could see that we could see who was typing and we can all see the message. Now this is actually set up with a database. So any new clients that landed on this page, they wouldn't see any of the data that we already sent. But if this was connected to a database, then you could see old chat history messages. So since this is a Node application, you do want to make sure you have Node installed. If you don't already have this software, then you want to make sure that you go to the nodejs.org website and go ahead and get the software installed. And also too, if you go to the About Me section here, it does explain how JavaScript works in the backend as server-side code, and it does give an example of how to set up a Node.js server. We are going to be building it with Express, so the setup is going to look a little bit different, but if you prefer to not use library, you can do it just with the modules that come already included with Node. So what we want to go ahead and do first is create our server and our index page. So I'm going to create that now. And however you create the page is up to you. And then I'm going to create our package.json, and that's by doing npm init. And I'm going to leave all the defaults there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and also install our packages. So we need Express, we need Socket.io for now. So I'm going to say npm I, and you can do yarn as well. So we'll wait for that to get installed. So all of our packages are installed. So next we're going to go ahead and get our server.js file set up. This is reassurance. We can see that we have those packages listed in our JSON. So in our server.js, we're going to quickly just build up our node server here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some variables that are going to just be calling out those modules from the packages that we installed. So we need express, and then I'm making a variable called app, and that's going to be assigned to express. Then this server needs to be an HTTP server for WebSockets to work. So we are going to call in that module as well. But then we're also going to say dot server because we need to tell it what server that's on, and that's on our app server. And then we need to include socket.io. And then we need to attach that to our HTTP. And then we just need a port. And this is going to equal port 3000, or it's going to equal a different port if 3000 is unavailable. And that's what process.env.port means. Okay, so we have our Express server set up, and it's an HTTP server with a socket attached to it, running on port 3000. So let's go ahead and do app.listen, and then we're going to say port, and then we're going to do a function. So I'm going to use an arrow function here in this case. You can do functions the original way. And I'm going to say console.log, and I'm going to say listening on port, and then I'm going to concatenate the port variable. Okay, so then we would want to just verify that this works. So I'm going to use nodemon, which is going to refresh the server every time we save, or you can just use node, but I'm going to use nodemon. Type. Great. So as you can see, it says listening on port 3000. So we have that set up. So now let's go ahead and get our socket.io set up on the server. So I do just want to put up a visual of socket.io and what it's doing. So we'll need to put socket.io on both the server and the client. So right now in Visual Studio, we just have the server set up with the socket. We'll also need to create a client.js file as well, where we'll also set up some socket configuration. So the way that it works is once a client connects to the server, it's going to also have its own socket. So whenever the client does something, sends out some type of event, it's going to send that event out to the server, and the socket will be listening for that event. And based off of that event, it will do something like send information back out to all the clients, or maybe even just one particular client. And any client connected to this server will be able to, send events and then the server will send those events out back to the clients that it is supposed to go out to. So we're back in our server.js file. I'm just going to zoom in some more here. So what we'll want to do to set up the socket is we're going to get the variable and we're going to say on, so io.on, and then we're going to add an event for it to listen to, which is going to be a connection event. So once a client connects to our socket server, then it's going to do something. So we'll need a function here. In this case, I'm going to write the function the original way. And the parameter will be the socket that's coming from the client. And then it's going to do something. So in this case, I'm just going to say console.log, and I'm going to say client is connected. Then I'm going to concatenate, and I'm going to include the socket ID. So I'm using the ID parameter of the socket. So if we were to run the server and test this out, we actually wouldn't be able to see this being logged out on the server because we still have to set up the client side of it as well in order for the server to know what the client is doing and receive those events. So let's move on to our index page and our client page so we can actually see this message. So before we start setting up the client.js file, we do need to create it, which we haven't done yet, but there's just a little bit more configuration with the server file that we need to do. Right now, we don't have a front end. We have the file for it, but we aren't referencing it in our server. So we need to actually send that file to the front. So to do that is we're going to say app.get, and we're going to do an entry point, and then we're going to do a function that accepts a request and a response. This is an arrow function. And then what we're going to do is we're going to respond with sending a file. And the file we're going to send is that index.html. So in the parentheses, I'm going to say underscore underscore dir name to get to the root. And then I'm going to say plus parentheses quotes / index.html. So that should actually serve the index.html file to us. We don't have anything in there, so if we test, it's probably going to be a blank or white screen. Okay, so if we go to our local environment, oh, I need to start Node.js. So we do have a blank page because we have nothing in our file. Usually if we weren't actually serving the index page, and we would just have errors on the page. So let's go ahead and get our index page set up. So actually before I get into setting up the index page, I'm going to actually set up a middleware for with using Express, which is actually going to serve static files for us because this needs to be set up in order for additional JavaScript files, CSS files, just to be served. So to do that, underneath the app.get, I'm going to say app.use, and then I'm going to say express.static, and then public, which is the folder that is going to house all of our CSS or JavaScript files that needs to be read that are coming from the server. So public is the name of the folder. That's just the traditional name. And inside of public is where our client.js is also going to live. So I'm going to just create the client.js. And I'm also going to create the public folder. And then I'm going to move the client.js file inside the public folder. So any files underneath the public folder can be executed by our app. So now I'm going to go into our index.html. And I'm going to set this up using a extension, which is a boilerplate. So it's already going to create the HTML template for me. You can just copy and paste one from, some other source if you don't have this extension. And at the bottom, it automatically comes with the script for including some JavaScript. So here is where I'm going to add the client.js JavaScript file that we created. So if I do /, you can see that it sees my public folder, but we don't need to say public folder because we're already referencing it in this server. So we just can strictly go straight to client.js. So I'm going to just add some dummy data here. So we can test to see if this is actually showing up. So I'm on local. Oh, I need to start the server again. Okay. And then I'm going to view the page source. And we can see the JavaScript file is there. Oh, I mistyped. It said clients, and it's just client. All right. So our client.js is empty. So that's why we don't see anything. But we can see that everything is referencing everything properly. So now we can actually set up our client JavaScript file with the socket configuration. So before we actually really configure the client, we need to get a form in here. So it'll just be better to explain it actually seeing a form field set up. So I'm going to go to Bootstrap and I'm just going to grab an example off of their page. And I'm going to go to the examples section and I'm going to go to the sign in and I'm going to grab this form. And looking at the source, I'm just going to grab the form information for now, and then I'm going to, go over linking this to Bootstrap, etc. So this is not actually going to be verbatim the form. I'm just using it to get all of the things that I need. So first, what I want to do is create a div, and it's going to be a class called chat window. Or yeah. And then I'm going to paste that form up underneath that. And the chat window is going to hold our text, our text stuff that we're sending to each other. So you don't have to get a form from Bootstrap. You can just do something like really simple with no styling. I just gonna do it this way. But instead of, I'm gonna take out this image. I'm gonna leave that header there for now. I'm gonna take out the label that says email address. Then the input type, instead of email, I'm gonna change this to text. The ID, I'm gonna change this to say handle, which just means the name of the user. Placeholder, I'm gonna say name, or you can name that handle as well. Where it says password label, I'm gonna take that out. I'm gonna change the input type to text for the password, and then I'm gonna rename this to say message. And then the placeholder is gonna say enter a message. Now underneath here, it looks like a checkbox and something else. So I'm gonna delete that div. And the button, I'm gonna keep, and I'm going to say send. I'm going to erase the p tag, and this header, I'm just going to move it to the top and just change the header to say chat with me. So if we take a look at our local environment, then we can see if we can see these changes. Great. So now we need to just go ahead and add a little bit more to our index, which is going to display our messages in between chat with me and the input fields. One thing that I did notice is that I was missing my socket.io script tag. So I'm going to go ahead and place that at the bottom above the client JavaScript file. And I'm also going to change this class in my chat window. I'm going to change this div to be an ID instead, because when I am referencing my elements, I'm going to be doing get element by ID. So I need to change that to an ID instead of a class. And now that we have that set up, I can show how our connection from client to server is going to work. So I have two windows set up here, which I am just showing the client and I am showing the server. So in our index.html file, once again, we just added this script just to allow us to have options to the socket globally. So for us to connect to the server on our client side, we're going to say const socket equals IO. And that's going to be our connection. So once the client reaches our server, the server is listening for events. And one of the events that are automatically there is the connection event. So then it's going to console.log, the client is connected with the socket ID once any client connects to the server. Now, one thing that I did mess up on is I put app.listen here, and instead this should actually be http.listen because our WebSockets work off of a HTTP server. So I'm going to change that to say http.listen because otherwise our WebSockets technically wouldn't be on the same port or the same server, so we'll never actually get this response without saying that we are listening on that HTTP server. So let's go ahead and try to test this out. So I'm going to do nodemon server.js, listening on port, and now let's go locally to our app. We see our app is there, and we have that logged. So since our client connected to the server, it heard the connection event and it went ahead and ran these instructions, which is logging this information. And if we refresh as different clients, you see we get different socket IDs, and that's automatically assigned when you connect. So what I would like to do next is go ahead and set up the client in more detail with getting some of our DOM elements. So I'm going to go ahead and create these elements here, which is message, and if you put a comma after the variable you're creating, you don't have to say const or var again. You can actually just create the next variable. So I'm going to say handle. I'm going to say output, which is going to show our messages. And that's actually something I haven't created yet, is an output variable. And then I'm going to do button. There shouldn't be a comma, it should be a, or a semicolon should be a comma, and then we'll put a semicolon if we're done. Okay, so we have our variables created, and I'm just going to go within the div ID chat window and create another div ID and name that output, and that's actually going to be what displays the text chats that we are saying to each other. So what we're going to want to do is go ahead and set up an event listener, which is going to be linked to our button. So we're going to take our button and we're going to say add event listener, and we're going to listen for the click event. And that's also going to be a function that is going to do something when that button is clicked. So what we want to be done is we want to send our input that we put into our message and our name, we want to send that to our server so then our server can do something with that, which is pretty much going to be sending it back to our clients. So in order to send that to our server, we are going to say socket.emit, and we're going to call the event user message. And what it's going to send is it's going to send the object, which is going to be our handle and our message. So we're going to say handle equals handle.value, and then message, which will be message.value. So after we press send in our input in our text chat, when we put send, it's going to send our name and our message to the server. I don't know why it says node value there, value. So on our server side, we need to be listening for this event so the server knows what to do with it. So we are going to say socket.on, and that's going to be within our socket connection. And we're going to be listening for the user message from the client. So once we receive the user message, we're going to get that back as data. And it's going to be a function. So what are we going to do with that data? We are going to take it and we are going to broadcast that out to our other clients. So we want to tell our other clients what our name is and the message that we sent. So we would actually say io.sockets.emit user message and the data. So it's getting our handle and our username, and then it's going to send that back out to our client. So then our client needs to be listening for events that are coming from our server. So we're going to go down a little bit and I'm going to say socket.on, and we're listening for the user message from the server. We're going to take the data that it's giving us, which is a function, and then we're going to do something with it. So we need to pretty much display that data. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the elements and the tags for that. So we're going to grab our output element because there's nothing there, and we're going to put something there, which is our text. So we're going to say output.innerHTML plus minus, oops, and then I'm going to say a p tag and a strong tag, and I'm going to concatenate and say data.handle plus then I'm going to end the strong tag And then I'm going to say data dot message plus, and then I'm going to end the p tag. So this pretty much should be outputting our name in the message that we entered in our output div. So we sent the information to the server, then our server sent it back to all the clients, and the client received that, and the client is going to display it on our page. Okay, so the output for the HTML was a little cut off, so I just want to make sure it's on the screen here with everything that I did. So this should output inside that output div here. So that's why we don't have anything in it, because our text chat is going to be showing up there. So let's try to test our page. So I'm going to start the server. Okay, and it didn't go anywhere or show us anything. Add event listener 8. Add event listener button. We need an ID on our button. So I'm going to create an ID and name that button. Hopefully that fixes it. And I'm going to do a refresh of the page. Okay, let's try to test this. Awesome. So I'm going to bring up another URL, another local. So we can see we are connected to each other. Now, if we were connecting this with a database like MongoDB or something like that, then we will be able to see, chat history. But we don't have that connection in this tutorial, so that's why when you first get into the server as a client, you can't see any previous text. You just see from the present and however long you stay on the chat. Okay, so we're back in our project file, and it's great that we can see that we can exchange information. So what we want to do is we want to create an event that's going to tell the other clients that are connected that somebody is typing. So we're going to create a typing event. And this time, this event is not going to be sent to everybody. It's only going to be sent to the clients minus the person that's typing. We don't need to tell ourselves we're typing, so we're going to exclude ourselves. So let's go ahead and get the event on our client, and then we'll get it set up on the server. Okay, so when I'm typing a message, I want to send my name to the server, and then my server is going to send back my name to the client, telling everybody that I'm typing. And in this situation, like what mentioned, we don't need to tell ourselves we're typing, just the other clients. So I'm going to be listening on the message ID. So I'm going to say message.add event listener, and I'm going to be listening for key presses. So when there are some key presses happening, then I want to do something. So the function I'm going to be doing is sending our name to the server, and our server will send that back. So I'm going to do socket.emit, and I'm going to name this event user typing. And it's going to send my name, which is handle.value. And I should be writing comments here. So in our socket connection on our server side, we want to go ahead and set up to be listening for this event. So we're going to say socket.on, and we're going to be listening for the user typing message. And we are going to be waiting for the data that we get, which is going to be in our function. And what we want our server to do is we want it to broadcast that we're typing to all our clients. So this time we're going to say socket.broadcast so we can exclude ourselves, and then emit. And then we are going to fire off the user typing event, and we're going to send the data to the client, which is our name. So now on our client side, we will say socket.on, and we are listening for our user typing message. And it's going to take the data that is coming from the server and do something with it in a function. So we are going to pretty much tell our clients that I'm typing or whoever's typing. Now we actually need to create another div for this piece, and we didn't actually create it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and get that created. So to keep it simple, I'm going to name the div typing. So I'm going to say typing.inner HTML equals I'm going to do a p tag and a strong tag. And then I'm going to concatenate with the data, which is going to be our name that was sent from the server. And then a string to finish the message that I'm going to say is typing. And I'm going to end that with a strong tag and the closing p tag. So I need to actually create this element typing. So I'm going to go ahead and list it in our file with the rest of our variables. So I'm going to call this typing and then get element by ID typing. And then I'm going to go ahead and go into the index. And I created a typing div offline. So I already created that here. So I put it underneath the output. So I put typing underneath here. So we have it referenced in our client as well. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take the user is typing event and I'm going to actually move it above the event for submit because we're submitting stuff, after the fact. So let's do all of our dynamic stuff before we're actually doing anything that sends. And also having that after the click button event, I didn't actually get to see the message saying that I was typing. So just cut it out and paste it above the button event listener. So the way that we're going to clear the message after we get done typing is we're going to go into our event listener with the button. And after the closing, we are going to add a event listener again that's just going to clear the values. So we're just going to say document dot get element by ID, and we're going to get the message element, and we're going to say dot value equals, and that's just going to clear out that message for us. And then what we also want to do is we want the clients to know that the user stopped typing when they actually stopped typing. So in our user message, we are going to include the typing element here and assign that as an empty string when a user sends the message, it gets assigned as an empty, it gets assigned back empty pretty much. So we're gonna say typing dot inner HTML equals. So let's try to see what that looks like on the front. Okay, so I have my two chat applications on local. My name, hello, John, JJJ. So what I noticed is that it doesn't say is typing until after the input. Let's see. So it looks like I guess you don't have to establish yourself first, but as you can see too, our message clears when we send. Let's do it again. So the issue for me, what I noticed why it wasn't saying is typing right away is because I didn't close my user message event. I included the user typing inside the user message. So I should have closed it like so. So they are separate events. I had them as combined events, if that makes sense. So if I go and test my events now, we should be able to see better results. So off top, I should be able to just say, I should just be able to see is typing on the message area. All right, so that works. So I'm going to fill out the form in full, my name again. And then I'm going to send. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. My name also. And then I'm going to send. So the last thing that I'm going to do is just do a little bit of styling. So we went and got that bootstrap form earlier, and just to go over again what my setup looks like, I actually removed the form tags from the body because I felt like I didn't need it. But I want to just go ahead and include the styling for Bootstrap since we are using their layout. So I'm just going to get the Bootstrap CDN to link that into our page. So I'm going to get the CSS and this isn't really using JavaScript, so that's all I need from there. And I'm going to go and take out this style link and replace it with bootstraps. And that should actually give us the styling for just a better look with the field. And if we want to make this not take up the entire page, let's just add a container class around our fields. Great, so that looks a little bit better. And our next step would be to deploy this to Heroku so that you could use this live. So actually, let me just take up the full page so it's visible. So the next step we want to do is go to Heroku because that's where we're going to be deploying this app. So it's live. I don't believe you can deploy this to GitHub because it's using Node.js. So I believe GitHub doesn't support that, but you could try. But you want to set up a Heroku account and you can use the service for free. And there's paid services. You know, normally the free services has more limited resources. I'm already signed in and have an account set up, but walk through that if you don't already know how to use this and set it up. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to create a new application, and I'm going to name this It's Chat Time. And here it has the steps for me on pushing my code up. And then of course you can also sync this with your GitHub account. So I'm gonna just go through these steps because I don't have them all memorized. So I actually pushed this to a Heroku app earlier, but I'm gonna just push it again to go through the steps here. So the first thing that we need to do is log in. and we would pretty much git init our project, which is already done for us. That's why it says master, because I already did this. And then normally I just check the status of my projects. And like I mentioned, I already put this up. So it would have all my project files in red. Then I'm gonna go git add, and it's gonna add all my projects. And then I'm gonna go git commit dash am dash this was pushed before, but pushing again. So it says nothing to commit because I've already pushed this project up and I didn't make any changes to it. And then I'm gonna just do another push, git push, Heroku. So I actually need to, before I do that, I need to sync it with this repo. So at the bottom where it says Heroku git remote a it's chat time. So now I'm going to git push Heroku master. So we deployed this code to its chat time. So let's see if we can see it in action. All right. So you can see its chat time is set up. This can be used on phone. I'm going to go into another web browser. Uh-oh, something messed up because this doesn't seem to be working. So I was confusing myself just a little bit because I was looking at local and I wasn't looking at Heroku. So I have both of my it's chat time. I have two clients up, it's chat time, it's chat time. I can even do this on my phone, and I'm gonna type in Brady, and then we can see there Brady is typing. And that message has been sent. And we can see the message there. Marcia, 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 Marcia. All right. So we were successfully able to create Node app using Express and Socket.io, and be able to set up our clients to chat with each other. And in our next tutorial, we'll be going through how to video chat with somebody else through the browser. And video chat is going to be using a technology called WebRTC, but we'll also still be using Node, and we'll also be using Socket.io. Setting up the video chat is somewhat similar, but there's definitely some more configuration that we need to do. So thank you so much for watching this tutorial, and hopefully I see you in the next tutorial to set up our video chat.